I think that there's been a fundamental disconnect and break from the Fed and the rest of Treasury and the government. And I think that Scott was very clear, like he views that as an independent organization and it should continue that way. But it was very clear to me that they are singing from their own hymn book. And it just doesn't seem to me that Powell really understands the gravity of this situation. And I don't think that he's really willing to play ball. So he's probably on the margins. Again, this is my total interpretation of this, because I think it's almost like a political gambit. And I think that that's very dangerous. That's, again, just my own interpretation. I just do not think that Powell, A, has the data to make a very clear decision, and B, will act unless it's totally necessary. So I think there's an overcorrection here that's happening, which I think is dangerous. And I think it's going to slow down the pace of cuts, which I think will then create a lot of other pressure in the economy.
We've never been in a situation where in 100 days, a federal government is setting out to cut their spending by $1 trillion, which has a significant effect, a recessionary effect on the economy. There's less federal dollars flowing out, which goes as revenue into various businesses and income for a lot of people that are employed as contractors or directly by federal government agencies, coupled with, for the first time in 100 years, a significant change in the policy for tariffs for goods flowing into the United States. And whether that will reduce spending by consumers or drive up the cost of products by consumers. And we talked extensively about both of these issues with Bessent and Lutnick in DC this week. In fact, folks like Lutnick are making the case that the current measure of GDP is probably not even correct. The way we measure it, the way we count it. And so the traditional economist's point of view on making rate adjustments as a function of economic contraction or growth may be wrong.
You know, we were seeing it landing in the water, but what you're not seeing is they couldn't walk when they got out, and they were only supposed to be there for what, like 10 days?
Yeah.
And
8 days, and it ended up 8 months or something.
Yeah,
like
8
that.
months, which is horrendous, because one of the things that I believe that America stands for is we don't leave people like that. And it's an American issue, not a political one. And so there's no reason why we shouldn't have engaged SpaceX sooner. It was offered, and they turned it into a completely political issue, and Boeing fumbled the ball.
Really well
And so, you know, I think hopefully this is a message that's loud and clear. And one of the things I'm so excited about is little kids watching this and seeing this and what it means for the future of our country, because they're looking up to people like Elon, and they're going to be the next political class in the future. And that will matter. You know, this is the equivalent of the moon landing. And to see somebody in private enterprise do what Elon has done is just outstanding. So that's basically my comment on it.
Any thoughts on the cost versus conflict of interest, I guess, hand-wringing?
Look, there's a couple of startup alternatives. And I'll put alternatives in quotes because they're not really GA. They're not generally available. They're not really launching. They're still in this early experimentation phase. One is Blue Origin, and the second is Relativity Space. The problem with both of those two approaches, well, the feature of both of those two approaches is theoretically that there's a different economic model there. But the reality is that SpaceX is the only company that has consistently been able to take these costs and just crunch them down to like more than one launch a day this year, I think. Like, it's just an incredible scale and pace. So no, there is no economic alternative. They are the absolute cheapest in the market. I mean, I'll tell you a very quick story. I was also an investor in Relativity. I think I owned about 10% of the company. And I just got